Morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 22nd, 2018. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioner Sobroff, Johnson, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on any of the consent agenda
We have
items?
a card on 1A and 1D.
1A and 1D?
I'll move items 1B, C, E.
That's it. We have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, no one's opposed. So let's go to the ones we have comments on.
For 1A, we have Gina Di Pietro. And this is relative to a donation of a service dog memorial statue.
And then also, what's the next one we have?
And then it's 1D, Adam Smith.
Okay, good. Morning, Sandy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner, how are you doing today?
Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to thank the Los Angeles Police Foundation on their generous donation to honor these canine officers. Thank you so much. It's a beautiful memorial. It's going to happen. I think it's a good thing, so thank you.
You have a motion for approval on 1A?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next comment? 1D.
Adam Smith,
Is 1D?
1D.
Okay.
Monetary donation in the amount of $75,000.
Mr. Smith, good morning, sir.
Good morning. I just wanted to point out that there's about $450,000 worth of donations coming from the Police Foundation today that we don't talk about. If nobody makes a public comment, you all just approve it. I don't know if you've looked at what they are, but 75 grand to celebrate Chief Beck on his way out. Do you know if that's paying for people to show up or, yeah. I just have some questions as to where that's going to be spent, but as with consent agenda items where there's no deliberation there, so you guys just approve it. But 450 grand today from the Police Foundation. Out of the purview of the City Council and the Mayor. Any type of public deliberation, you'll just approve it. Good day.
Thank you. Any other comments on 1D?
We have none, sir.
Okay. Motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Okay, and please let the record reflect Commissioner Figueroa Villa is not present.
Okay.
We're now on item number 2, regular agenda items. We have no cards, sir.
Okay.
Oh, I believe we do have one card on 2D.
On
I don't think we need a
2A.
report on 2A.
2,
2D.
okay, on 2A, we have a motion for approval on 2A.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The citation, unit citations on B and C, any commission comments?
No, they were both, in both instances, they were very deserving for the citations, and I was pleased to read about the fine work they did, which we obviously saw at the time, and I'm happy to move both items to B and to C.
Okay. Are any of the folks here who are receiving the commendations for these 2 items?
No.
Okay. Yeah, yes.
One person.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion for approval of
Okay.
2B?
We have a motion for 2B and
2B and
2C,
C,
and
okay.
I think Shane,
You have a second on both?
Second both.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
We have 2 cards for 2D, and we have 1 card for 2E.
Okay, on 2D, we have a report on the first quarter report on homelessness. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
good morning.
Okay. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce a couple guests I have with me here today. We have Steve Pedersen from Bureau of Sanitation. We have Nathaniel Vergro from Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. But in the audience, I also have Gina Dee DeMonico. She's the supervising city attorney over the Los Angeles Homeless Court Program. I also have Captain Rolando Solano, the commanding officer, Custody Services, who oversees the Jail Inreach Program. And Lieutenant Brian Bixler, who's the officer in charge of the Mental Evaluation Unit. Hopefully I didn't forget anybody. Real quick, I'd like to go over some of the numbers in the report, but more importantly, talk about the efforts that we have as a group moving forward to address homelessness. So we'll just start. With victimization, we're comparing this report first quarter of 2018 versus first quarter of 2017. So we had an increase of about 14% in homeless victims related to Part 1 crimes. That's an increase of about 70 victims, first quarter versus first quarter. That's the total number in 2018 first quarter was 587 violent crime victims. 305 of those were victims of violent crime. As far as suspects identified in investigations or crime reports that are experiencing homelessness, we also had an increase. In the first quarter of 2017, we had 684 homeless persons identified as suspects, and then in first quarter of 2018, we had 953 homeless persons identified as suspects. That's an increase of 269 or 39% increase.
Excuse me, Commander, can you speak closer into the microphone, please?
Oh, sure. Okay, and then we'll take a quick look at our enforcement numbers. For felony arrests related to homelessness, we had an increase of 7%, or an increase of 105 arrests. The primary increase came from arrest of suspects involved in aggravated assaults. There was a 40% increase there, and also those individuals that had probation and parole warrants increased about 27%. For misdemeanor arrests, these are physical arrests and bookings, there was a 33% increase. The primary cause for this increase by far was narcotics-related arrests. There was a 43% increase, or 144 more narcotics-related misdemeanor arrests in the first quarter of 2018 versus 17. RFCs, or release from custody, these are essentially arrests but releases in the field. There was an increase of 8%, or an increase of 145 citations over the two quarters. The primary increases here were citations or arrests for open container, as well as park or beach violations. I'd like to note, though, for RFCs, we had a significant decrease in shopping cart violations. We decreased by 84 RFCs, or 39%. We also had a decrease in 5611 enforcement, which is public right-of-way enforcement, and that decreased by 44 RFCs, or 22%. Moving on to our MEU, or Mental Evaluation Unit. Quarter over quarter, their contacts or responses to those experiencing homelessness rose about 20%. It went from 1,016 calls in 17 to 1,219 calls or responses, an increase of 203. Something to note here, of the 1,219 responses that MEU had in the first quarter of 18, 915 of those calls or responses resulted in some type of transportation, whether it was a 5150 hold or transport for services. That's a significant amount, and you'll see why it's significant when I go over the hope and reset numbers that the holds were. Moving on to uses of force. So if you look at just the straight numbers and uses of force between the two quarters, in 2017, the first quarter, we had 140 uses of force with persons experiencing homelessness. These are non-categoricals. I believe there was 2 categoricals involved in that. In 2018, we had 165, which is 25 more uses of force. But if you look at the number of, so I broke it down further. I looked at the total number of contacts we had in 17 versus 18, and really the contacts per use of force, that ratio actually declined in 2018. So I think we're making some progress. Per contact, we're having less uses of force. And then if you look at our categoricals, we had 0 for persons experiencing homelessness in first quarter 2018. Then you break it down and you look at our Hope, Reset, and our Transit Services Division officers that are assigned specifically to homelessness, and Hope had 0 uses of forces in the first quarter. Transit Services Division has 0 use of forces, and we're talking about the officers, the 1 in 10 officers assigned to the homeless detail. And then Reset had 6, but this is still less than they had last year. So definitely think we're making progress there. Going to the specific homeless details, starting with Hope, you'll see in the report that it shows a 22% decrease in the number of contacts, and that's a little skewed, and so I can explain. What we've gone through month after month, what we're working on is how do we define a contact, what is a contact, and I think we're getting better at defining or refining the definition. And it needs to be a meaningful contact, whether it is enforcement, whether it is outreach, but it can't be just a hello. So the next number is the actual number of field interviews where somebody's talking to an individual and they fill out the card. That's increased 29%, or an increase of 520. So although what we call a contact looks like it's gone down, I believe our true contacts have gone up and our field interviews have definitely increased. So referrals to LAHSA for housing for Hope, 394. Other referrals for housing, we had 126. Service referrals other than housing to LAHSA, 8, and service referrals to other entities other than LAHSA, 2. So the 5150 hold number, Hope in the first quarter had 6 5150 holds. Now, remember, MEU, our SMART team, had 915 holds. So that's why I bring up that difference. Reset, moving on to Reset, we don't have first quarter 17 data for Reset only because they captured data differently. They didn't start capturing it consistently until the end of 2017. So I'll just give you the 2018 numbers, first quarter. Referrals to LAHSA for housing, 462. Other housing referrals, 19. They didn't do any service referrals to LAHSA, and then they had other service referrals would be 41. Their 5150 holds, they had 20, versus again 915. Transit Services Division, they had first quarter 2018, 672 contacts with persons experiencing homelessness and completed 231 field interview cards. Again, their dynamics are a little different. They need to get people off the transit system, and so the time with the person may be a little limited. Their referrals for housing to LAHSA were 7. Their referrals for housing to other service providers was 97. Other services referrals to LAHSA were 2, and service referrals to other entities than LAHSA were 63, and they had 4 5150 holds. And then before I go on to the initiatives and what we're working on as a group, I'd like to just comment on the holds. I try and determine why MEU has so many more holds or is transporting so many more people than our homeless details for services, whether it's a hold or whether it's to get treatment. And I think it has something to do with having a clinician, a DMH professional, somebody with them right there to do a quick assessment and act on the situation. Hopefully moving forward we can somehow embed those resources with our homeless details. That's a goal of mine. Okay. I can talk about the initiatives now unless you want to hear from the partners real quick on their numbers or their data.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sanitation.
Steve Pedersen, Chief Environmental Compliance Inspector for Bureau of Sanitation. During the first quarter, we collected about 921 tons of trash. This involves both Hope and CSLA and also our OHS operations. We also collected 8921 sharps, hypodermic needles, razors, knives. We processed approximately 1718 sleep sites or tents. We are continuing work on El Pueblo. Every Tuesday we're doing cleanups there. In Hollywood, we've initiated distribution of trash bags where the homeless can collect their own trash, and then the trash bags will be eventually collected by sanitation. And then for the 18-19 fiscal year, we'll be adding 4 HOPE teams and 4 CSLA teams. That's all I have.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nathaniel Vergao from LASA. So I did briefly just want to comment on an issue that we have identified, which is the referral process to LASA. It's something that Commander Choi, his team, and my teams have been working on as something that needs to be streamlined and made more efficient and effective. So a couple of things that I wanted to call out that we're working on is that really over the last couple of months, we've streamlined the process through an email system. We're also working on 2 additional mechanisms that will make that system obsolete, and for good reason, just because it's not the most efficient and effective way to track data. In addition to improving the process of how referrals are made, our team is working on information that we can provide to officers to help them better understand what is a good referral from our perspective. So it's not just a question of somebody that they met who's homeless, but somebody who has an expressed need that we would likely be able to assist them with. So it's not grand numbers of every single person that's been contacted, but those who are really expressing a desire to take some steps in changing their housing situation, because we just don't have the resources to respond to every single referral that's made to LASA. Addition to that, as I mentioned, there are 2 mechanisms that we're working on. One, which I believe Commander Choi will go over in greater detail, which is the UHRC, the Unified Homelessness Response Center that the city has stood up. We have staff that are there 40 hours a week with the goal of being able to assist in deploying resources to respond to situations that police may encounter or sanitation may encounter or other city entities, as well as to be able to strategically look at where our resources are being deployed and to make sure that they're being deployed in the most efficient and effective way possible. In addition, through Measure H, the county Homeless Initiative Strategy E6, which is a coordinated outreach system, has been really working hard to make sure that all the different outreach teams across the county are working in coordination. So that's not just my teams at LASA, but teams at PATH, LA Family Housing, as well as any other homeless service agency that has outreach. So the system that's been developed through LASA is in soft launch right now. We've given training to the Board of Supervisors and their offices, and we're through soft launch just testing to make sure that there are no bugs, make sure our staff and all the staff at the different agencies know how to respond to these referrals. The next step would be to open those up to first responders and elected officials in their offices here within the city. So my expectation is that will happen in the next week to 2 weeks, unless we come across any unexpected bugs that we haven't yet found. So what that will allow is for officers in the field to be able to go on any internet-connected device and make a referral from the field, putting in specific geographic location information as well as details about who the individual is or what the encampment looks like, number of individuals, what they've identified at that encampment, whether it's potential drug activity or significant mental health issues, as well as any potential safety concerns that we need to be aware of. So those are two mechanisms, as I said, that will hopefully replace the email system that we've developed in very short order, that will also automatically track how referrals are made, how they're responded, and in what time frame.
Just briefly on that, I'm really glad to hear that it's very difficult to understand what's going on with the numbers as they're currently presented and the lack of communication. So I'm glad to hear you're streamlining that. The app sounds awesome. When do you think it'll be sort of fully deployed so that we could see numbers here that are consistent between the 2 departments?
Certainly by third quarter of this year, we should have it fully deployed, would be my expectation, so that by the end of third quarter, we should have an idea of specific numbers through that system.
Great. And you said that you don't have the resources to respond to every referral. Can you explain what you meant by that?
So specifically within LASA, we have 13 teams that work across the city, and then in addition, we have 3 staff that work the Skid Row area, and we have our HOPE teams. And given the breadth of geography and the number of homeless individuals within the city, that's just far from enough resources to be able to respond to the individuals that LAPD encounter. So even just looking at the number of referrals from Reset, which I believe was in the order of 400 plus, for 3 staff to be able to respond to 400 referrals is just not physically possible. And especially because these referrals, it's really important to be able to have a timely response, because if they are expressing to somebody that they want help, the idea is to be able to get there as quickly as possible to capture that golden window of opportunity. And with that number of referrals, we just physically don't have enough bodies on the streets to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. You indicated that I just want to make sure I heard you, that your in-beds are 40 hours, that your folks are working 40 hours a week, is that right?
Correct.
So I'm just curious about the other, I mean, that's 8 hours a day, so the other 16 hours, what's occurring during that period? Because I know that our folks are 24/7, so I'm just want to understand how that gap gets addressed.
That's a good question. At this point, there are not services in place to be able to address those needs. We had worked with LAPD on the possibility of having some motel vouchers set aside for late night placements. The struggle has been finding a vendor that's willing to work with us on that. Among all the vendors that we currently work with, we were only able to secure one, and they were not within the city of LA. They're out in Gardena. And even that, the first time that a placement was attempted, they refused it. And so the struggle is to find the ability for those resources. Our shelter system is not set up for 24-hour placements. And in terms of outreach after hours, the biggest concern is safety. Most of our outreach workers are not embedded with law enforcement, and to be working in the dark in the areas where they work is a significant concern in terms of safety. Additionally, the majority of resources that we work to connect folks with around getting their IDs, getting public benefits, connecting to services, all of those services are regular business hours. So often, even when we do have teams that deploy early to encampments specifically to reach folks before they decamp, one of the struggles is that by the time when we arrive there, we're not able to make immediate connections to services, and by the time those services are open, folks have decided to move on with different plans for their day.
No, thank you. I appreciate that additional illumination. I'm curious, although I won't ask for a lengthy explanation here. Perhaps I'll check in with the subcommittee, but it seems to me that these are among the significant issues that impact some of the numbers that we see here, that, that we're in the field all the time, and the resources that we're looking to connect to aren't there. And so I would imagine that that has real implications for what the department can accomplish, even at its very best.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to some of the, there's a lot of initiatives or programs going on with homelessness, but I'll highlight a few here. So the Unified Homeless Response Center opened its doors April 30th. There's still construction going on in the physical location. We are moved off to one of the breakout rooms in the EOC, but we're operating currently Monday through Thursday from 7 to 5 p.m. We have multiple partners in there from the mayor's office, LAPD sanitation, LASA, city attorney's office, Rec and Parks, DOT, animal control. We do have some attendance from the county side, departmental health. So we're getting our feet wet, learning what we do, what the best operating picture is each day. And currently, we're focusing on 2 areas, encampment areas with outreach, education, some cleanups, and see if we can impact those. Hopefully, we can replicate that model and expand it to multiple locations at one time, and really be able to manage resources and coordinate citywide efforts daily. So I will keep you posted on that. I think the construction of this location will be done towards the end of this month, and we can physically move into the new location, and you guys are all invited to come see it at that point. So that's one program that's in the works. Steve Pedersen mentioned it a little bit, is the El Pueblo effort through CENTCOM. We have the Stores Bin pilot program. There's 41 bins there. I know the report said we had less than like 29 being utilized, but that fluctuates depending on the day of the week and when. We've gone up to 100% usage where there were no bins available, so I think we're comfortable that it's being fully utilized. So we're happy about that. The Jail InReach program, if you're not familiar with that, essentially what that is when somebody that is experiencing homelessness is physically arrested in jail, and any of the 3 jail facilities that LAPD has, custody services officer goes through all the booking slips and looks for the 1942 transient address, so identified as homeless, puts those people on a list, and every single one of those people are contacted and asked if they want some type of services or help with a service provider, and if the answer is yes, they take them out of their cell. They have a separate conversation with them with the service provider, and ultimately the hope is that leads to CES intake and then additional services as soon as they physically get out of jail.
So that happens very quickly because our hold
Yes.
period is a very short period.
Yes, so currently it's 2 days a week on Mondays and Fridays.
The jail InReach.
The jail entry occurs. The hope is to expand it, but just to give you some numbers, we looked at the first quarter, obviously 17 versus 18. The first quarter of 18, they contacted 496 individuals that were arrested, experiencing homelessness. 333 of those individuals actually consented to receiving service. That's a 67% success rate.
Very big.
And that's only for the first quarter. But historically, I believe, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe their success rate is upwards of 75, 76%. So,
Much better ratio than out in the field.
yes.
Yeah.
Again, if you put a person in a situation that they're vulnerable, which everybody out there is that are homeless, but I think this is a situation where they're going to be more apt to accept services. And it's a start. The quicker we can lower barriers and get people to just enroll, to get those first steps out of the way, all they have to do is show up to these next places and they get services.
So you would say expansion of this program from 2 days to more days would be a very, very big priority.
Absolutely. Now there's a balance because we have that 48-hour window where
Correct.
we don't want to do it every day because you're going to run into the same people every day.
Oh, I see.
So roughly every 48 hours, maybe 3 times a week, possibly 4. I think we'll let
see.
the experts speak on that. But expanding it slightly with enough personnel to do it for longer periods during the day rather than just 4 or 5 hours a day, I think would definitely be beneficial. Again, on the back end, the services have to be there. So otherwise, you get the referral issue that creeps up on us.
Do you track from the initial acceptance of service back into what happens once they're released?
So I do not, but custody
Or
services
is
does.
someone-
It is
yeah,
tracked.
Is
Yes,
it tracked?
It is
That
tracked,
was
correct.
the real question. And do you know what the actual rate is of follow-through?
I do. I don't have the data with me.
Okay.
So could you come back with a report on, to address those questions and provide more of the data on how this is working and what it would take to expand the program to more of a, maybe not every single day, but more able to reach all of the people who are in our custody?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Another program that's going on, county and city, is the Los Angeles County Homeless Court, also known as the HEART program. And the supervising city attorney is here with us, Gina. Essentially what this is, when somebody, these are primarily dealing with infractions, when somebody has a lot of citations for either sleeping, lying, sitting on the sidewalk, 5611, those, and they can't pay for them, they don't go to court, it goes to warrant, or they just stack up and the fines just increase. The example that I saw the other day on an individual's history was a series of, 11 citations over a period of 3 years. The initial fines total were about $1,000 with the late fees and everything. They're over almost $8,000. There's no way they're going to pay this. So what this homeless court does is they come to a source event at the Central Library, and you have all your service providers there. And so they take a piece of paper, they go and they meet all the service providers, whether it's to enroll in AA or narcotics or not. sign up for shelter or housing, get your Hep A shot, so they sign off and they get credit for all this. When they bring that paper back to the city attorney, that city attorney will take that document to the court and have all those citations cleared. So again, it's not an absolute fix, but what it does do is it allows, once that person leaves that source event, now they are enrolled in all these services. And the day they wake up and decide they want help, they can walk right in there and they already have their name and their information, they're ready to go. It's not asking
City
to go to 10
Attorney
different locations.
Gina? Hi. Do you want to add?
Or I can
Yeah,
just go here.
go ahead.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you like me to provide more metrics or information on that?
Well, I just think that, tell us what's changing and what,
Absolutely.
What we see is working.
We have very exciting things on the horizon for the homeless court program.
Excuse me, can you please identify yourself for the record?
Oh, Gina DiDomenico, Deputy City Attorney.
go ahead.
Great. So I supervise the current Los Angeles County Homeless Court Program. We've had a 3-year grant from the county through HPI funding. In that 3 years, we were asked to provide 6 clinics a year and to serve 300 individuals a year. In 3 years, we have hosted 63 clinics, enrolled over 2,639 individuals, and dismissed 2,727 citations. So I have a group of individuals that is highly motivated to work on this issue with me. We're out in the community at the Source event, as Commander Choi shared. We're at Connect Days. We go to encampments. We were inside Manchester Square. We go where individuals are. The idea is to make this as low barrier as possible, to cut the bureaucratic red tape, to make it possible for individuals to move past these infractions that, as Commander Choi stated, have gotten to a point where they could never be paid. The exciting thing that we have coming up is we are going to receive some Measure H funding, which will allow for expansion. Rather than deploy alone, as we have been. We always invite the public defender. I want to make that clear. We recognize we can only help with a very narrow issue. But with this new development, we will deploy alongside the public defender. They will be providing assistance with Prop 47 expungements and criminal record clearing. We will provide the infraction component, which they are not allowed to provide legal assistance with. And we'll be out at, as I said again, in the community at events. The model will shift so that we're in the community more often, more regularly, rather than once a month or twice a month, as we've been able to do. We'll be able to be out weekly, and we'll be able to share that information with the community online, which is very important.
Great. Okay. Commissioner questions? I'm interested in your elevator speech of what's going right and what needs more work. Because there's a lot of information here, there's a lot of ways to take it. Just like the city attorney said, here's a program that's exciting, this is working. I'm interested from your perspective in this report, what is strikingly positive and what needs the most amount of work?
Well, from the LAPD perspective, I think what is working is if you look at our numbers and the shift from when this all started, I think our officers are really turning the corner and turning into, not that it's right, but it's happening and it's good. They're turning into social workers to the extent that they are actually establishing strong relationships with those individuals in the field. Although the enforcement numbers are still up there, they are not enforcing as a first resort. It really is as a last resort. They're building trust in the communities with this homeless population. Countless stories where homeless individuals are actually telling their stories to officers. So I think from an LAPD perspective, we've made a lot of inroads and progress into this population. And the cleanups and the outreach are becoming somewhat normalized. So that's success. I think on the back end, where we can improve is, again, the coordination with the referral process and ensuring that those that say they need help actually get the help, because obviously we know when they say we need help and they don't get help, they become more service resistant and it becomes problematic for everybody. So those are the two, the front end and the back end. I think the UHRC, the Unified Homeless Response Center, will help coordinate some of those efforts. And better understanding for us is if the capacity is met, then we need to look at something else to do to help out rather than continue to make referrals that are going to fall on deaf ears.
Final
So.
questions, comments, commissioners?
I have, this is more of an
Go ahead.
more of an observation than a question. Although I do think it highlights a problem that requires additional attention. In a time where Part 1 crime overall in the city is down by 4.4%, and we see Part 1 crime increasing by 14% in the homelessness community, and we know that that's a community where historically it's underreported, so the increase is probably could even be significantly higher than that. I just find that to be, particularly concerning.
Agreed. It is, again, the victimization has increased 40%, probably more, underreported. And the suspect population has increased 39%, almost 40%. So it's problematic on both ends. So there is definitely a place for law enforcement in the homeless population. We have to have a city of laws. And if there continues to be victims in this population, we will be there trying to make it as safe as we can. And that's what I can tell you.
Thank you for the report, and spent a lot of time with you in advance of this, and appreciate your work to answer all of my questions. I'm glad to see the progress that you alluded to in terms of categorical uses of force and decreasing arrests and citations for shopping cart violations in 5611. Glad to see increases in outreach and referrals by Reset. Love UHRC, very excited to see that up and running and look forward to that starting to have an impact. And as I said, very interested in the Jail In-Reach program, impressed by the results and looking forward to figuring out how we can expand that. I hear you that you're pleased with the progress that's being made inside the department in terms of really embracing this idea of arrests and citations as a last resort. But unfortunately, the results continue to be increased arrests and citations for violations that are a consequence of people's status of being homeless. And that is not effective. I mean, what is the point, as you said, of citing people and they're racking up fines they can't possibly pay and being ordered to go to court when they can't get there? It's just not solving the problem. And in fact, for many people, it makes it worse. It makes them less employable, more difficult to get housed, and erodes their trust in the police. So I do want to figure out what we can do to make progress in those areas. I know it's hard, and it's not just the department, and the fact that you don't have the resources to follow up on the referrals that the department makes, and the extremely low placement rate into housing. It is a crisis, and I think we need to figure out how to work better together and how to do more to address this. In particular, I do want to explore with you, and I know this involves other departments, but to figure out, what is the result of these RFC cases? Are people actually going to court? What are the results of that? Are fines levied, and what happens if people are unable to pay? How many cases are going to warrant and then failure to appear, and then later resulting in arrest? And I would like to understand more about what's actually getting referred to HART and what the results of what number of cases are resolved and that sort of thing. And then appreciate the report back on the Jail In-Reach program. And when you do that, it would be great if you could bring providers and hear from them. And I understand there's an amazing video that we'd love to see about the impact of that program.
Great. Okay, let's guys stay up. Let's have the public comments.
Okay, we have 7 comment cards. We have Jed Perriott, Michael Novick, and General Jeff.
Morning, sir.
Well, congratulations. You guys have been awarded by City Hall the contract to solve homelessness, right? Or rather, disappear it is what you're doing here. Disappearing people into prison cells, jail cells, into garbage trucks, or into isolation, right? You're trying to normalize these sweeps, as he said, normalize sweeps. How can you say that? How can this police officer say that that should be normal? And now, I go out every week and monitor these Hope Team sweeps that go on, and that's exactly what they are. They're not cleanups, which is how they try and frame them. This person representing LAHSA is talking about how he does outreach with LAHSA workers. I mean, a Hope Team is an LAPD team. That's all it is. That's all it is. When we talk to folks, and I've talked to these outreach workers from LAHSA, they do not want to be seen with the police because the homeless population doesn't trust them whatsoever. because the police every week, steal people's property, throw them out, mock people, put people in handcuffs during sweeps. For a 5611 violation, you have one too many items, sir. You have a bin. We're putting you in handcuffs. And that's when we're there with cameras. When we're not there with cameras, oh boy. Oh, the stories we hear. Yeah, no, so, excuse me, yeah, you're looking at me, sir, sanitation? It's a disgrace what sanitation is doing across the city. Throwing people's lives out, giving them 10 minutes to get everything together. No notice given. No notice given. Don't give me this bullshit about you put up a notice, a piece of paper, 20 feet away from someone's tent, and that's a notice. So then it's their fault. You're blaming the victim. And these officers, when you ask them what they're doing and why they're doing it, they blame the homeless people. They're service resistant. You know, these folks are using heroin. You know, it's their fault. Maybe they do belong in jail. Maybe you all need to be defunded and put that money into real outreach.
Next.
Michael Novick.
I listen to these reports, I'm reminded of Gogol's story, Dead Souls. You talk about, how many tons of garbage you've collected and how many people you've contacted. This officer said that, well, the uses of force went up, but the percentage of uses of force went down because the number of contacts went up. So all of those contacts, I doubt, are felt as beneficial by the people being contacted, and the fact that a smaller percentage of those you contacted got arrested or cited, as Shane Goldsmith pointed out, the number of citations and arrests went up. And then you have the city attorney saying, oh, well, we've cleared 2,000 citations, but they've issued another 11,000. So, it's a shell game. And I'll just emphasize what was said. The man from Lhasa, they had 400 referrals and 3 people to handle them who couldn't. So, your priorities for the city are completely topsy-turvy. You're spending more than half the city budget on law enforcement and criminalizing poverty, criminalizing homelessness, criminalizing the inability to pay the fines for the previous citations. And you're not dealing with the problem, which is that people can't afford to find a home in the city because of the nature of the economic and political system that you people sustain and maintain, and these people enforce with force of arms. So until you begin to deal with that fundamental problem, the rest of this is bullshit.
General Jeff.
Morning, Jeff.
Morning, sir. Excuse me. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is General Jeff from Skid Row. 2 minutes is not enough time to talk about all what's wrong with this presentation, this information. For instance, all of what the positive points of what's been put before you today are reactionary solutions that take place after a person is incarcerated. It's amazing. Even the city attorney's office has said they've got exciting solutions that happen after a person is incarcerated, in handcuffs. Why is the department not speaking out and holding LASA, Department of Mental Health, even Bureau of Sanitation accountable for doing more preventative and interventionist type work before people are incarcerated? Where are those solutions at? Because all it does is justify the department's ass and justification for criminalizing homelessness, for having a $2 billion annual budget with an additional ask for even more. It is an outrage. For instance, sanitation, they should put together preventive solutions that put together a type of package where the homeless folks in their encampments can actually have, whether it's broom cleaning supplies, where they can clean up their own areas even before OHS and the other cleanup campaigns come through. So that way it can cut down on the overall budget, because what sanitation is doing, and with hazmat crews, they're coming out saying that everything is soiled, and they're just discarding all of a homeless person's personal property. The department is doing a horrible job of taking the lead, along with this commission, to take a leadership a role in terms of demanding more from LASA, demanding more from DMH to say, get out there, so that before we get out there. That is totally unacceptable. LASA is 9 days before they release their current homeless count numbers, and based on the last 3 years, there's been a combined 60% or higher increase in homelessness. This is horrible.
The next 2 speakers, Eddie H. and Ryan Kelly.
ADH Los Angeles Community Action Network. And let me just first say that the LAPD should get out of the business of homelessness, first and foremost. And I heard the officer speak as if the LAPD is compassionate. We know you guys are about criminalization, first, second, and third. And that's what you've always been about. That is the comprehensive strategy that this city employs, criminalization when it comes to the homelessness. And you start your conversation off by talking about victimization. And all that was is just a mission creep into more criminalization. So we put that on the table about victimization and the things that we need to change and the things that we need to fix so you guys can come along and continue to criminalize the populace as individuals. And let me just throw out a couple numbers here. You talk about RESET, which is just another form of the Safer Cities Initiative, which from 2005 to 2015 spent $1 billion on criminalization. And we had a meeting with the mayor, July the 29th, 2015. He said out of his own mouth that SEI was a total and abject failure. He wouldn't tell Chief Beck that because he's scared of the LAPD, because we know the LAPD runs this city. So when you talk about, I even heard you say something about that 48-hour period that you guys were not offering services because you didn't want the same people to come for services. So you think homelessness is not homelessness? If you're homeless, you can remove yourself for 48 hours. Where's the compassion in that? And we talk about, and I heard General Jeff talk about services and talked about resources. We fought at LA Can. City Council, Jose Huizar, who is the council district of this district, and also the mayor's office to get those resources, brooms, mops, trash bags. And, the response.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker. Eddie,
Because,
come back during public comment and use your
all
time.
of the conversations
during
I heard
public
has been
comment.
something that.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Ryan Kelly, followed by John Moats and Hamed Khan.
Okay. Thank you.
DSA. Yo. Hey, my name is Ryan Kelly. I'm with DSA. I'd like to remind the commission that further integration between LASA and LAPD is not a measure of our success. It is an indictment of our failure. Law enforcement has no business interacting with our homeless folks. Maybe we could put another empty aphorism on the wall behind me, but that doesn't make it your mission. In addition, HOPE teams are identical to LAPD. I have witnessed the brutal sweeps being perpetuated across the city by our sanitation departments, and they are accompanied by officers who are, for all intents and purposes, identical to HOPE officers, and the folks on the street can't tell the difference and don't care because they're all equally as brutal. And let's talk for a moment about this InReach program that we all seem so excited about. This is obscene that our strategy is to incarcerate people and to, I quote, make them feel vulnerable in order to foist these services upon them. These are not solutions. These are just a pile of obscenities.
John Moats.
I'm John Motter. I'm with Ground Game Los Angeles, the Democratic Socialists of America. If y'all really want to help with homelessness, y'all need to just get the hell away from it. Like, stop issuing citations, stop criminalizing the homeless. Like, don't even look at them. Like, homeless people hate cops. They may not say that to you to your face sometimes. They may have like pleasant interactions with you because they don't want to get shot. But when they're talking to us, like, they never have a kind word to say about you. Hope sweeps are brutal and dehumanizing, and the officers on them are completely unsympathetic to the situation homeless people are in. We've routinely seen people issuing out 5611 citations. I mean, if you're not prosecuting them, why are we still issuing them out? Stop issuing them, because people are still getting warrants for missing court dates or not paying them. They're still going to jail, which costs us thousands of dollars and is another brutal, dehumanizing experience. We have reports of LA sanitation workers stealing items during sweeps. Guys, we got one friend downtown told us how he found a sound mixer in a dumpster while he was dumpster diving. Sanitation workers like, oh, this is a good one. Throws it in the cab of the truck, not in the back with all the other, not with his tent, not with his other, essential belongings, bicycles, things like that. If it's nice, if it's new, cash, if they couldn't get it fast enough, happens all the time. And the protocol around this is not being followed. LAHSA is not doing their outreach. We know this because we have friends in LAHSA who say they're not doing the outreach, that those 3 check-ins are not happening. And a lot of this doesn't even matter because we're talking about folks who sometimes they have no limbs. Like, how are they going to move all their stuff? Like, you give them 24-hour notice, like, oh, well, that's good because they can't lift more than 10 pounds because they're physically disabled. People with mental disabilities who don't even know where they're at the time, and we're blaming them for not getting ready in time. It's absurd.
Hamid Khan. We do have one late card, Mr. President.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, Jonathan Foster.
Hello, my name is Ahmed Goins, and I'm a citizen of Los Angeles. And the only reason I'm here today is to talk about why the 3 feet law in the cycling community is not being enforced. We've been losing lives left and right. People are dying. 4 years ago,
I think this would be on public comment. Would be in public comment, which is coming up.
Am I in the wrong?
Yes, sir.
form?
Yes.
I believe he does have a card for public comment, sir, yes.
Okay. So
So-
let's do this for public comment.
That's fine. Okay, that's a bad issue too.
Okay. Go ahead and talk. You can talk about that.
But I'll defer my time to somebody else who needs it now.
Thank you, sir.
Hamid Khan, please.
So we've heard about folks who are in the thick of this everyday 24/7, Jeff and several other people. I just want to bring in a global perspective, international perspective, and a critique of, and just really and this is a report by Philip Alston, who was the UN Special Rapporteur on extreme poverty and human rights. And he was here last fall and in the early winter, and he also had a town hall at LA Can. And I just want to read a couple things from the report that he issued on racism, disability, and demonization of poverty. And he says that racism is a constant dimension, and I regret that in a report that seeks to cover so much ground, there is not room to delve much deeply into the phenomena. Racial disparities, already great, are being entrenched and exacerbated in many contexts. He goes on to say that the criminal justice system is effectively a system of keeping poor in poverty. So when we talk about the criminal justice system, this is what the UN Special Rapporteur had to say about this thing. He goes on to say that homeless are effectively criminalized for the situation in which they find themselves, sleeping rough, sitting in public, and public places, public urination, and other sort of offenses that have been devised to attack the blight of homelessness. So this is constantly the cycle of criminalizing the victim constantly. And lastly, the use of legal system is not to promote justice, but to raise revenues, as we saw in Ferguson that the DOJ report investigated as well. So what we are seeing is a complete failure of leadership in the city. The responsibility directly lies with the mayor. The responsibility directly lies with the mayor. The people of Los Angeles in this county approved Proposition HHH, which was supposed to raise the amount of money to address homelessness. And 1/3 of that money...
Come back during public comment and finish up. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Jonathan Foster, please.
Jonathan? Morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jonathan Douglas Foster, and I've never introduced myself here. I come from a family that has 60 straight years of service to the United States military. And I did run against Donald. I was P600220068, and I knew that when I signed up, I could be shot dead anytime. The problem is that the billionaires, when all these Marines died, there's got a list of 400 billionaires, and they can't be billionaires without dead Marines. And we have a homeless problem that's being forced into you, and you are not the homeless people. You're the police department, who I support. The 98% of outstanding service gets totally eclipsed by the 2% of that everybody else says. I'm not going to swear on here. Because of everybody else's approach, I know we got this part taken care of. But there's some very important things that need to be said, and that is in this town in LA, there are 23 billionaires. And if each billionaire gave $5 million, just gave it, they're not going to feel it, are they? When you have $1 billion, you drop 5 million. Do you feel that? So I really think in the name of the United States of America and all these dead Marines, I think the billionaires need to start kicking down the money they can't take with them. So I'm going to end with what I should have started with. Father God, thank you for today. And Father God, thank you for your son. And protect us all, Father God. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And we have no other comment cards on this item?
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a recommendation? The recommendation for board action is approve the department's report. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, City Attorney.
We oppose.
Let's go to item number 2E, the department's report regarding implementation of national best practices. John? So we've read it. Tell us what you want to tell us.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners.
Go ahead.
John Peters, Police Sciences and Training Bureau. We're here to address a couple of the items that are the recommendations that are on the report from the training side of the house. I'm joined by my partners, Captain Dan Roundolph, who runs the recruit side, and Captain Tony Carranza, who runs the in-service side of the house. So specifically, we were asked to talk about or provide an update, as we've done before, relative to the PSL program and where we're at with that, and how that's progressing, and also the recommendation about rendering first aid. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony and let him update you on those two items.
Okay.
Good morning, Chief, and members of the Commission here. Our PSL2 program, which covers de-escalation strategies, use of force policy, FOS update, arrest control, professionalism, ethics, procedural justice, first aid and CPR, impression management during intense encounters, peer support and mentoring. It's a 4-day class that is instituted upon the officer's third year with the department. So it's 2 years following PSL 1. So they go as a class, and they go together, and they conduct this course. Our developmental plan initiated in February of 2018 with our initial pilot class. In March and April of 2018, we conducted the critique, review, and adjustment of the initial pilot class. May 21st and 22nd, including today, we were interviewing and discussing with our adjunct instructors. One of the directions that we got was we wanted to expand this not just to training division personnel, but to personnel throughout the department, so they could become instructors and also embrace this mission throughout the entire department, not specifically only to training division, but also throughout the field within the department. That is occurring yesterday and today. On May 23rd, we're going to have our Train the Trainer Day, where we bring all our instructors and we go through, this is basically a scenario base, as well as some lecture in regards to the actual training itself. So the officers will go through all the categories I was talking about, and then go through scenario-based training, and then we evaluate and debrief afterwards the scenarios with them. June 11th and through the 14th is going to be our second pilot class. So that's scheduled next month for our second pilot class. After that, we will once again critique and review, getting input from both the instructors as well as the officers that are involved.
What were the dates on the next pilot class?
June 11th through the 14th, sir. and that's going to be conducted at our AATC facility in Westchester. After we finish that class, it will go through our instructional development unit. That'll revise and finalize our complete lesson plan, which will be then submitted to POST. After we get that, POST compliance is important for us because 3 of the categories that we have to go through for perishable skills, which is our arrest control, our first aid and CPR, as well as our tactical communications, can be covered through this program. So it alleviates a part of the burden that we have to do for our perishable skills training. So that's the reason why we go through our post accreditation for this particular course. That will generally take about 60 days for posts to get through and approve everything in case they have questions or concerns about it. Any revisions that are necessary per post. And then in October, we will institute our monthly process will begin where every month each class will come back just as it is in PSL 1.
So the intention is then that in October it will be fully up and running?
Yes, sir.
Has the OIG been monitoring the pilots?
So speaking generally, we have been working with the department to sort of be aware of the changes they've been making. With regard to sort of this report and some of the concerns, for instance, a full-time cadre of staff to do the PSL training, we can sort of produce a more formal response for you in the future if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that would be valuable, and you identified the issue that I'm most concerned with is the idea of using adjunct professors as opposed to having a full-time cadre. And based on your experience with the initial pilot, you still feel comfortable that the adjunct professors are the way to go, given current staffing needs?
I think based on the current staffing, I think it's the only way to go. I think that they are valuable because they bring the credibility of them being in the field, and as opposed to somebody that maybe has been in training division for a certain number of years, and they bring those experiences to the table. I think it's worked out with PSL 1 very effectively. We've got over 700 officers that have gone through that, and we look to maintain that in PSL 2.
And there's you're confident that there's a consistency of messaging that is through all the classes?
For PSL 1, I am at this point, and it will certainly be our goal moving forward for with PSL 2. I know the IG has been at a number of the PSL 1 classes, representatives from the IG's office, and they've supported the presentation and what we're doing moving forward. I think everybody believes that it's a worthwhile program, and I think that we're experiencing a lot of success at this point.
Great. I mean, you know what a huge fan I am of the PSL program in general. I'd love to visit during the next pilot. So if you could send me the schedule, I certainly won't be able to come for all 4 days, but I will like to come in for a portion of it.
Absolutely.
So you could send me a schedule, and also within that, what you would recommend as a commissioner might be the most valuable parts to witness.
Absolutely.
Can you send that to me as well?
Yes, I'll send it to Mr. T. Fink, and we'll get out to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Well, I don't think we finished that. That's just that one item.
That's the PSL. Are there any other questions or comments on PSL?
No.
Okay, then we'll update you on the CPR, first aid, and AED.
Yes, sir. And regarding our first aid, CPR, and AED, in April of 2017, the state created a requirement requiring first aid, mandating the department implement training regarding these particular topics. Currently, we have 92 instructors within the department who have completed the 40-hour transition course to teach the first aid, CPR, and AED. We have 2 more instructor courses scheduled, one in July and one in October. Officers who spend either 10% or more of their time in the field are required to take this training. So we have some officers that are required by law to take the training. Other officers don't, depending on their particular assignment. The training consists of a 4-hour course online course, and that's followed by a 4-hour practical skills application exam, which is given by an instructor. That has to take place within 6 months of completing the online training. So initially, the officer takes an online course that's 4 hours long. Within 6 months of completing that online course, he has to go before an instructor, and it's a 4-hour practical application that goes on in order to be certified. The compliance of this training is being monitored by individual prospective training coordinators. So each division has a training coordinator assigned to them, and that division coordinates and keeps track of all the requirements that the officers assigned to that particular division have to go to. Currently, we have 1,450 officers who have completed the training.
When are we on track to finish training for all of our officers in the field?
Sir, it's somewhat of a moving target because of the nature of the assignment that goes through. But as the training coordinators go through it, there is that 6-month window. So it's a rolling compliance rate. But the goal is to get it done by April of 2019.
Infant CPR, is that included?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's a portion of the program?
Yes, I think that was a question you had last time,
Yeah.
and that is a part of the.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
And where are we with respect to equipping our police cars with basic first aid supplies?
So you asked us about that, and we're working to price it out. The current kit that's provided to officers that was initially put together and assembled ran about $65 a piece. I believe that initial investment was about $500,000, and so we believe it's going to be along those lines in terms of getting the equipment that's necessary to deal with the stuff that our officers are confronting.
So where are we in terms of having that budgeted and actually done? I mean, there's most police, maybe not most, but there are many, many police departments that are equipping their officers. And have we, compared to how have we evaluated what we should be equipping our officers with?
Not to the extent that I think that you're looking for at this point. So we need to do some more work on it.
That needs to be a priority, because when was this report initially released, Mr. Tefeng? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I believe it was April of last year, if I recall.
Okay, so we're over a year, and this was one of the recommendations from the report. So that should be a priority, and if the department, it seems to me the department should be able to come up with the money, but if the department cannot come up with the money, it's $500,000. It's a one-time cost. There's such a huge public benefit to it that I do believe we could raise the money from some of our very generous donors, and I would be willing. Excuse me. I'd be happy to take the initiative to reach out to some of our funders, but we know that we know that this could certainly save lives.
So we'll absolutely do that and make that a priority, Commissioner. The other priority in terms of the thing that we've been focusing on is because of our current policy, we would have to make a change in policy relative to rendering aid and use of force scenarios, and so that's kind of been the focus. And in terms of where we've been on this issue, a working group that was established, a training bulletin draft that has been created and is with the city attorney's office right now. So that will set the whole process in motion in terms of the actual rendering of the aid in the field.
Okay, so Mr. Tefeng, make sure that that's agendized as a part of our next use of force subcommittee meeting as well. And let's make sure that the city attorney, if possible, we have a representative at that meeting so we can discuss the status of that side of it as well.
And Mr. Tefeng, I can give you the name of the city attorney that's kind of attached to this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to the other issue.
That was the two that.
I thought there were three.
Those are the two from the training side.
Okay.
I know that.
Good morning, sir. So I will comment on my portion regarding the engagement piece. So this is probably I believe the third time that we've been here. I've had the pleasure and the honor to discuss some of our ongoing outreach programs that we've done in the past. And I know you've read the report, so it's self-explanatory, but there's one program that I do want to make mention that's not in the report that I think it speaks to our point of messaging of how important community engagement is within the department, but also incentivizing and rewarding our personnel for involvement in community engagement. Some of you may have received an invitation to our USC Leads program graduation. That is taking place on June 8th. Just for a brief overview, the significance is that it's a social change model of leadership. It's a one-year program where we have 40 students that have engaged in the program through USC, and they're going to present capstone projects, which is going to be June 2nd, I believe, June 1st or 2nd. And their programs are all community engagement, community-based, where they have a leadership role in how they can make and create change and create suggestions for programs and how we can utilize it in the real world here with LAPD. So that's happening June 2nd. So I think those are two programs that speak to, again, incentivizing. I also, with the consistent messaging and the support from my bureau chiefs and commanders through Office of Operations, I'm confident we will see more community policing medals awarded to our officers throughout all ranks. Simply because we're talking about it more, it's something that we need to recognize our officers about, and I think we're just paying note, and it is on the forefront of everyone's for priorities for this department.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to note that last week I was in Newton Division for, I was doing a ride along in Newton Division, and I took a friend of mine, and it was just, again, remarkable the work that's being done in housing projects in the CSP program, and the relationship between the young kids in the rec center there, who all knew the police officers and were excited to see the police officers. And it was a really enjoyable afternoon. It's great, the work that's being done there, and the new, I don't know if it's a policy, but of having probationary officers work in the CSP program in Hollenbeck and Newton is really impressive, and I think it's very impactful. And to the extent that we can expand that to other divisions, obviously we don't have the CSP program in many divisions, but to the extent that we can rotate our probationary officers so they do some time in the CSP program, I think would be incredibly valuable for the department.
I agree, and that is a topic that I've had, a topic of discussion I've had with our bureau chiefs, and as deployment allows. I believe that it's happening citywide probably more often than those two areas, but on a full-time basis, regular basis, on a month-long loan, that is happening in those two divisions, and it is the desire that it happen citywide. Thank you.
I just have a quick question about the CompStat. I know that there's been a great deal of work put into creating a way of tracking and measuring this kind of activity at CompStat, and according to this, that the draft sort of protocols are currently under review. Do you have any update as to when that might be actually operationalized?
Yes, ma'am. So it's very close. Right now, it's being reviewed and added in the system by our CompStat unit. A lot of work did go into it because we had the input of all of our other command staff officers that were a part of the review and the gathering. I might have to ask
come on up.
Commander if he knows the date. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Good morning. Commander Chris Pitcher, Operations. We are going to go online with the CompStat Community Engagement Profile late June. We are following up right now with a notice that directs all of the areas to implement this program, as well as instructions for capturing that information. And getting back to the other commissioners' discussion on the P1, we have a program right now. The notice was just drafted directing each of the 21 geographic areas
to assign a Phase 3 probationer to the Community Relations Office to work hand in hand with a senior lead officer for a period of 1 month. They will be rotated in and out so that they can gain that community perspective as well as make solid community contacts and take that back with them throughout their careers. This is going to commence on June 10th of 2018. So those are two things that are going.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other commissioner questions? Let's have, do we have public comment on 2E?
Yes, sir, we have 2 cards. We have Michael Novick and Melina Abdullah.
Mr. Novick?
Yeah, I'll point out again that the definition of community policing that's used in the law enforcement industry is that it's the domestic equivalent of psychological operations in the military. Community policing is an aspect of the militarization of the police. It's designed to control the thinking of the population or the enemy, and LAPD gets to decide who's their enemy. I want to talk about the impact of this implementation of national best practices. The question is, what is the outcome? You have the best trained killers in the United States. You want to compare, I come from New York, and New York people are outraged because the NYPD has killed 200 people since 1999. The LAPD has killed 200 people since 2010. So you're talking about a police force that's a third of the size of the NYPD and a population of a city that's half the size of New York, and the LAPD has killed twice as many people as the NYPD. So that's the consequences and the result of the training you provide, the so-called de-escalation and everything else, is that you have the most murderous police department in the country. That per officer, that's 6 times as many killings. Per person in the city, that's 4 times as many killings. So you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose and what is the result of the training, and what are you responsible for as the supposed civilian oversight of this department?
Melina Abdullah.
So this report, like your previous report, is hugely problematic because, again, one of the reasons LAPD continues to gobble up more than half of our city's general fund is because they're doing things that they have absolutely no business doing. We don't want LAPD addressing homelessness. That should be, housing is the answer to homelessness. We don't want LAPD engaging with our children. I'm the mother of 3 children. I don't want you in community centers. I don't want you engaging with my children. People need to be trained to engage with children. There's people called teachers. Remember them, right? Remember youth workers? Those are the people who should be engaging with our children. Matt Johnson can think that it's a good idea and concept because the people who address your children are not LAPD. You live in the valley where they don't come and intimidate and scare children. My children are afraid of them. So yes, they'll speak to them. They'll say hi to them. You know why? Because they're afraid of what will happen if they don't. So stop rolling out here and acting like we should be happy that you're in our communities. The only thing you should be doing at Newton Division is demanding that the people who killed Ezell Ford be fired. That's the only thing you should be doing at Newton Division. Say his name. Say his name. Say his name. So we need you to roll it back. If you as police commissioners are supposed to represent the community, and we are the community, we're not the handful of activists that Charlie Beck tries to condemn us for being. We live here. I'm an Angelino. I've been here for more than 20 years. How many of y'all are Angelinos? Right? So we're not the handful of activists. We are engaged residents, and we have a right to demand that the police.
Next speaker. Next speaker, please.
We have no other speakers on this item.
A motion to approve the department's report.
So moved.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's go. Let's go to item number 3. Thank you very much.
Report of the Chief of Police.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Say his name. Ezell Ford. Say his name. Ezell Ford. Say his name.
Eddie, I'm going to give you a warning. That was your warning. If you disrupt the meeting again, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And you also, I don't know your name, but that was your last warning also. Okay?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Chief.
Morning.
A couple of things to comment on. First, last Saturday, the department conducted its ninth annual gun buyback. We've had about 12 gun buybacks, but this was the ninth annual. We collected almost 500 guns, 10% of which were assault weapons. It was a well-run event. It's part of the department's overall strategy for reducing gun violence, which we have done significantly since the start of the gun buyback. I was a little bit late this morning because we had our 30-year pin ceremony. I gave out over 100 30-year or 35-year pins, including to your lieutenant, who's displaying it proudly. Speaks to the tenure of the Los Angeles Police Department. Many of the leaders of the department were there and received their pins with their families. It was a nice ceremony. We had a officer-involved shooting over the weekend that I will comment on. It occurred on May 21st, just after midnight, when Northeast uniformed patrol officers in the area of 52nd and Figueroa observed a stolen vehicle. They verified the vehicle to be stolen via their MDT. Before the officers could engage the suspects began to flee. As the suspects fled in the vehicle, the passenger leaned out of the passenger window, produced a shotgun, and began to fire at the police vehicle. We believe that it struck the police vehicle, blowing off one of its lights, one of its alley lights. The officers returned fire and were soon involved in a traffic collision. The suspects were captured, and a loaded shotgun was recovered from nearby. One of the other things I want to comment on are some statements made by the President of the United States last week. I wanted to clarify something. In a meeting with people from the state of California, the President held a press conference, and during that press conference, he mentioned Los Angeles Police Department. He stated that Los Angeles Police Department in January of this year arrested an illegal immigrant from Mexico for drug possession. He said that instead of honoring the ICE detainer, the LAPD set him free. The President continued and said that a few weeks later, the suspect was arrested for murder. The President then expanded upon that statement and said that the LAPD had the suspect in custody, released him, and that then he committed a murder. That's quote unquote. When I heard this, I had the department investigate this incident. We identified the individual who the President was talking about. We verified his identity with the federal authorities. We discovered he was a Juan Ramirez, who was has indeed been arrested a number of times by the Los Angeles Police Department, including in January, and subsequent to January, he was booked for a murder. However, that murder occurred in the summer prior to his initial arrest, had nothing to do with his release from custody following a minor narcotics arrest in January. And in fact, we have searched our records and have found no evidence that a ICE hold request was received for this individual. Not that we would have honored it anyway, because we believe that these requests are illegal. We have informed the federal government what they would have to do to make a city police officer able to hold somebody past their release time, and they've been unwilling to do it. But I wanted to point out that the Los Angeles Police Department did not release a suspect, as stated by the President, that later committed a murder. That murder had been committed long prior, and in fact, we arrested him for that murder, and he remains in custody because of that. And that is obviously independent of any immigration issues he has, and takes precedence over those issues. Want to comment on crime statistics. We had a very busy weekend, unfortunately, but our reduction still held. We're at about a 15% decrease in homicides so far year to date, and it's almost 9% reduction compared to 16. We're on track to have a near record year for homicide should this continue. Total violent crime is down 2.7%. Most notably, numbers of victims shot is down 26%. That's over 100 fewer victims shot in the city of Los Angeles so far year to date. Were we to continue at this pace, this will be the lowest number of recorded victims shot in the Los Angeles Police Department's history. Property crime is down a total of 5%. Most notably, motor vehicle theft is down 10%, which is a turnaround from what we've been seeing over the last couple of years. Gang crime is also down a remarkable 27% in the total 11 categories that we measure. So those are all very positive statistics. Total number of officer-involved shootings, as of 5/21/18, we'd had 13 so far this year as compared to 18 last year. That's almost a 30% decrease. Guns recovered, in contrast to that statistic, guns recovered are up. This is not including the gun buyback. We've recovered almost 2,200 guns off the streets of Los Angeles year to date. That's almost 4% greater than last year and 20% above our 5-year average. Traffic collisions in the city are down 1%. Serious injury and fatal traffic collisions are down 6.5%. Hit and runs are down significantly, 8.1% in total, and serious injury or fatalities are down 28%. The category that has seen the increase in traffic collisions, along with one of our speakers' comments, are bicycle-involved collisions. Even though the increase is incremental, a 1.2% increase, we have seen a significant increase in fatalities, 7 this year versus 3 at this time last year. So that's a significant increase. Sworn personnel on payroll, we have 10,035 Los Angeles police officers on payroll. Civilian personnel, 2,939. Reserves, just over 400. Specialists, 271. And we have almost 1,800 cadets in our program. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any public comments on the?
Yes, sir, we have 12 comment cards. The first 3, Lisa Hines, Paula Miner, and Adam Smith. Paula Miner.
Last week, Chief Beck spoke to the media regarding the incident of the ashes of Waukesha Wilson. And Chief Beck, your response was distorted and did not give the truth. Your statements were designed to discredit those of us who come to commission. On KPCC radio, you first laughed with the host about the ashes, and then you never explained the reason why they were there. Never mentioning that the family was extremely upset and grieving about the fact that significant information about what happened on the day of Waukesha's death had been withheld from them for nearly 2 years and just revealed in April by an investigative reporter on TV. You did not mention that you withheld that information from the family, from the commission, from the city attorney. You said that people like me come to commission to demagogue and intimidate others. These are your words. You said people like me come to commission for our own selfish reasons. You said there's supposed to be a question and answer atmosphere in the commission, and people like me prevent this from happening. You know that's a blatant lie because this commission has stated that they do not answer questions from the public in this setting. You stated that as people like me speak before the commission, we're thwarting the process, whatever thwarting means, for our own selfish reasons. Another lie. Black Lives Matter comes here to speak on behalf of families who have lost their loved ones, and also to talk about policies and practices that harm our communities. We've not come here for selfish or self-serving reasons, which you may have. And then you said those people, meaning me, are not in the discussion. That is true. You are the discussion. LAPD's oppression of our people is a discussion. You continue.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Adam Smith. followed by Michael Novick and Jed Perriott.
Every week we have to listen to the narrative of events that occur as written by the chief. A couple weeks ago he talked about events that happened in this room regarding the family of Waukesha Wilson, without mentioning Waukesha's name or mentioning that a settlement was negotiated with her family while the investigation into her death was still ongoing, and how an officer at the MDC was fired in the wake of that investigation. He talked about how we, community members, intimidate people that come in here to speak. Is the chief willfully lying or just woefully obtuse? Imagine for a minute that you were in the position of Lisa Hines or her sister Sheila, simply seeking the truth from a commission and police department that continues to remain silent about the cover-up of her death. Or imagine that you live in a neighborhood that has a large LAPD presence, where it's normal for multiple police vehicles to roll up on a group of teenagers like they did to Valerie Rivera's kids, and handcuff them, go through their pockets, accuse them of being in a gang for what? For visiting the location where their older brother was murdered by police months before. Imagine getting stopped by police for the crime of driving home while black, or crossing the street while black, and having it happen countless times. Imagine living in a tent legally and following all rules and city ordinances, but still getting shaken awake at 6 a.m. by police, told to pack up all of your stuff as quickly as possible, and having half of your belongings thrown away, your ID, your medication, pictures of your kids. Imagine being repeatedly targeted and criminalized for simply existing. And imagine then wanting to come to this and speak at this commission about your troubles. You get on the train or the bus and there's 2 police looking at you. You get here, walk through the lobby of the LAPD headquarters, walk by 15 to 20 police milling around, emptying your pockets to go through a metal detector, a big shotgun sitting behind the desk, then walking in here, having to sit in an audience full of police, surrounded by police, and when it's finally your turn to come and speak to the
Next speaker, please. You can come back during public comment and finish up.
Michael Novick.
Yeah, I'll follow up. I wonder why the chief never reports on the chases that take place in the city, which are equally as threatening to the public and the community as their officer-involved shootings. There were a number reported on in the media during the week. Never comments on them. I think one resulted in a crash. I want to continue with the discussion about the chief's remarks on KPCC Air Talk with Larry Mantle. Because I don't expect any respect for the public from him, but he referred to the LA Police Commission as the envy of the law enforcement industry as an example of civilian oversight, and that somehow the people who come to these meetings, like myself, and speak out on these issues are disrupting that and destroying that. And I think you really have to consider what that's about. That's he believes that he's in charge of you, and he feels that the work you do for him is exemplary in terms of covering the ass of the LAPD with the public. And I think you need to understand that you've completely failed in that mission, because nobody here believes a word that comes out of the mouths of almost any of you. Once in a while, Cynthia McLean Hill or Shane Goldsmith will actually say something that has the ring of truth to it. But the overall the thing when the rubber comes down to the road is that in the rare cases where you might find a police shooting out of policy, nothing is done. So basically, you're here as window dressing for this man's role as the commander-in-chief of the most murderous police department in the country. And you need to have a different concept of what you're about. If you seriously think that you're here for civilian oversight, you need to do it.
Jed Perriott, please.
The normalization of the Los Angeles Police Department, the normalization of the ways you have tried to diminish and disappear community members, that is changing. That is going to change. As much as you are trying your best to get rid of community members in order to make room for a Los Angeles that only consists of people that look like me, I can guarantee you that's not happening. And Charlie Beck, Waukesha Wilson will always be with you. Ezell Ford will always be with you. You can't erase their memory. We're not going to let that happen. And you can't silence family members, community members that come out here to speak against the violence that is continually being brought upon these communities. I don't understand how you can come out. Actually, well, I do, based on your history of who you are and what you've decided to pursue with your life, Charlie Beck. But the other officers in this room, I ask you to question, please, the role that you really play in this society. Is it really about public safety? Is it really about public safety? What does that mean to you? Does it mean targeting low-income communities of color that have been oppressed since the dawn of this country with the purpose of creating a country for the few wealthy white at the cost of lives, at the cost of millions and millions and counting around the globe? You are a part of a larger colonial white supremacist effort citywide. Steve Sobroff is a major local player as you flew over a helicopter in downtown in the late 90s and pointed to a working class Latino community and said, that right there, God made that space for a stadium, and that's where Staples Center was put at the cost.
Next speaker.
Jamie Garcia, followed by Hamid Khan.
So I also wanted to build on Chief Beck's interview on KPCC. I listened to it as well, primarily because I wanted to see if you were going to talk about predictive policing, and they mentioned that you were going to, but it never actually surfaced, which makes me think it's on your radar, and I wonder why. So, but going back to Sheila Hines and her throwing of the ashes in your face, that was a sign of power and a sign of people rising to demonstrate that we won't condone the incarceration or the murder of our family and our community as a solution, or even as you may see as negligence. Beck left that out of his discussion. In fact, he laughed and brushed it off, giving no context to why the action actually happened. Probably because he knows he was caught, that he fired the person responsible for Waukesha's death. So you're caught, and that's what people mostly do when they're lying. They laugh because they're caught. Every time I come up here, I tell myself that I'm not gonna raise my voice, I'm not gonna get upset, but it's moments like this that make me really lose my patience. We come here with so much substance. The June 5th hearing is because we pushed for it. The SAR audit was because we pushed for it. We talk about the UN report, we talk about our documented sweeps, and we even write reports. And I often point out Shane Goldsmith and Cynthia McLean Hill because I feel like you should know. But then I realize that LAPD's grasp is so wide and so vast that it's impossible. LAPD is in control. And so you all know that. You're not in control. But Beck, you run and you hide, and that shows your weakness because you're trying to ignore us, but it's impossible. Because the interesting thing is that you're leaving. You're leaving this room, but we're not. That's right. We rise and we believe in something.
Next speaker.
Next
Come
speaker
back
is
during
Hamid
public
Khan.
comment to finish your comment. So during public comment, you can come back and finish your comments. You can finish your comment during public comment. Who's the next speaker, please?
Hamid Khan, followed by General Jeff and Pastor Q, John Marie.
So if defending ourselves from and exposing conspiracies, lies, manipulation, cover-ups, harassment, and basic violation of human rights is selfish reasons, then goddamn right we are selfish about it. Yeah. And we better remain selfish about it. Because he will keep on. This is a propaganda war that's going on. Those are the tools of propaganda back there. Those are the tools of propaganda. These are the enforcers of propaganda that is going on. Because what we do and when we come here is speak the truth. We come here and expose the expansion of the surveillance state. We come here and expose the continuing escalation of militarization. We come here and expose the failure of the supposedly civilian oversight body, which is nothing more than a rubber stamp body. And what we come here to expose is this system that is fundamentally flawed by design. They have all these people, in uniforms, they have all this billions of dollars of budgets in the criminal justice system, but they continue to be the most murderous police department in the country. They continue to be where nobody is held accountable. So going back to my colleague Jamin Garcia, we will stay. We're not going anywhere. We will come here for selfish reasons. We will come here for Eric Rivera. We will come here for Ezell Ford. We will come here for Waukesha Wilson and the hundreds of people that continue to murder and harass and intimidate and shoot and lie about all these things. Because this will fall. Yes. Yeah.
General Jeff.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is General Jeff from Skid Row. On behalf of We the People of Skid Row and We the People of... Mic on?
Sorry, let's start it over. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
I was on the roll.
Get to give a plug about your hamburger place on me. Go ahead.
Woohoo! Blue Cafe. My name is General Jeff from Skid Row. And on behalf of We the People of Skid Row and on behalf of We the People of Los Angeles, I would like to file an official complaint against Lame Duck Police Chief Charlie Beck. Internal Affairs says that they oversee the rank and file of the department, but it's the Los Angeles Police Commissioners that oversee the chief. So I don't know what that process is, and I want to do that while he is still in that position. My reasoning being for the 22 minutes of missing video in the Waukesha Wilsons that has not ever been lifted up. We the people still want to see that not only the video evidence, but we want to see some type of a process being invoked by this commission. Lame Duck Police Chief Charlie Beck, he himself gave a press conference in justifying the officers and relieving them of any wrongdoing, which obviously now that we know was erroneous and it was misleading and it was a matter of obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, evidence suppression, and there's many other reasonings. So I am coming to the Los Angeles Police Commission on official capacity to say I want to officially file not press charges, but I want to file a complaint against Police Chief Charlie Beck, and I would like to know what do I need to do to make this an agendized matter. Thank you.
That's a question.
If you want to file a complaint,
No, I said I do. It's not if.
Okay.
What is the process?
Mr. Smith, you want to?
Sure. So I think there are a number of options for you to file a complaint against the department, against any member of it, including the chief. You can speak to any supervisor here from LAPD who's in the room. You can also file it with our office, the Office of Inspector General. If you'd like to do that, we have staff here available. We can get you our contact information.
It's not about if. I do want to do that.
We'll be happy to get you our contact information. You can come to our office, call us, write us, and we'll take your
I
complaint.
want to officially start that
Thank you.
process right now.
Okay, thanks.
So do I speak
Next
to
speaker?
you? Or who is the
Thanks, Jeff.
supervisor? Thank you, sir. Who is the supervisor? Who do I speak to?
If you stick around, I'll make sure that our staff meets with you right after this meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Is there somebody, there's somebody in the back that he can meet with now?
Next speaker?
The next
Hold on,
speaker.
sir. This matter is still going.
We have staff available to meet with you right now. They're in the back of the room, or if you hang on to at the end of the meeting, I'll be sure to meet with you as well.
The young woman, yes.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Pastor Q, John Marie, Gina Viola.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Pastor Q from the Church Without Walls, Skid Row, and also from Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. We organize clergy, so after I leave here, I will do my customary bidding of relaying what happened at this meeting to countless clergy around the city. Based on the design of this system, we expect the entire body and most systems to ignore those who are most adversely impacted until it's too overwhelming for the system, not until it's too overwhelming for the people. I never really addressed the chief, but I will today, because I have selfish reasons, as he stated in his interview. At the Church Without Walls, we have microloans for a lot of people who are trying to keep out of poverty and out of homelessness. We call that preventative measures. We have people who have been, one guy who's been arrested 13 times in 1 year while he was homeless. We finally were able, 5 years later, to get him housing. So I think when we talk about policing and homeless people and all of these issues, it speaks to the system and the design of the system. The system doesn't allow for compassion. That's why we continue to ignore Waukesha Wilson's mother. That's why when the chief is asked about it, he blamed us for the issue and never brought up the other side. The trauma, he never addressed that. We were just being unruly. And we know that the commission is not a place of dialogue, it's a place of monologue. And then after the monologue, there's a dialogue between the police representative and the commission votes yay. Never nay, never anything as it relates to us.
Gina Viola, followed by Valerie Rivera and Melina Abdullah.
Morning. Since the meeting where you falsely arrested Dr. Abdullah, I've watched and or read several interviews where Chief Beck describes our presence at these meetings as a mockery. The only mockery being made here is by you of the grief of the family members being executed by this murderous police force. Last week, Soboroff stopped the meeting while Lisa Hines was speaking. Lisa Hines is the mother of Waukesha Wilson. This commission has yet to acknowledge the officer who was on duty at the time of Waukesha's death has since been fired for reasons related to Waukesha's case. Yet you stopped a meeting while she was speaking. Who's mocking who? If you will not acknowledge the racism in these four walls, how do you expect us to believe you acknowledge it exists out in the community? On the day that Dr. Abdullah was falsely arrested, I was the person trying to force my way out of this room to witness what was occurring. Your officers reached across me and grabbed Dr. Abdullah and arrested her in my place because you want to continue terrorizing black people who come to these meetings to try and speak on behalf of the people being killed in their community and their family members. In addition to another troubling thing I heard you say more than once in these interviews, you referred to this commission as my commission. I have asked you many times why the police chief sits with the commission that is supposed to be overseeing him. That was my answer. It's your commission, Chief Beck.
Valerie Rivera.
Morning.
Good morning. June 6th going to make 1 year that Eric was wrongfully murdered and taken away from me. And Charlie Beck did a lousy job on the report. It's an unthorough report. And you guys are supposed to be the commission. And I'm just asking you to look, really take the time and really look into this case because Eric was murdered wrongfully by the negligence of those two officers that day. And Charlie Beck is trying to let them get away with it. I want to know what happened to the videos. There were supposed to be 6 videos, 4 body cams and 2 dash cams because the second car that pulled up, it literally just pulled up like a minute after the first car pulled up on Eric. Where's that dash cam? Where's those 2 body cams from those 2 officers? Why is it in the report that there's only 1 body cam footage and in the footage you can't see nothing? Because the cop's blocking the whole footage. My son didn't deserve to die that day. And because of their negligence and because of their inability to, slow down and instead of jumping out of their vehicle in a hurry with their guns drawn, failing to put their car in park, so fast that the officer wants to jump out of his car and trip and this whole time I thought what happened originally was the car door came and swung back at the officer's arm and hurt him. But now in the report, I'm finding out that the officer tripped and fell to the ground and hit his elbow on the street, claiming that he was shot. How can he be shot with an unarmed man? Having his partner go and shoot his gun towards my son.
Would you like to take your public comment now and keep going?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. 2 more minutes.
Okay. That officer jumps out of his car, trips, hurts himself. His partner goes and calls in saying, officer shot, officer shot. And it cracks me up that the officer, Charlie Beck puts in the report, that the officer was in excruciating pain, but he still managed to call into dispatch. And how they feared for their life, but my son had the car coming straight towards him, being shot down immediately shot down. And then when the officer goes and jumps back into the vehicle, because his partner in the report, it says his partner's telling him, oh shit, the car's still in park, step on the brake. I mean, the car's still rolling, step on the brake. And then the cop jumps back in the car, and instead of stepping on the brake, he steps on the gas by accident. Having the car roll over my son and pinning him under it for 12 hours? Leaving him exposed for 2-3 hours? When a person dies, an officer, a firefighter, paramedics, whoever it is that approaches that scene needs to put a blanket, whatever, a jacket, whatever over that body. That should be their first priority, is to cover up and respect that person. But they left him there for 2-3 hours exposed. I'm going to get a much more thorough report because Charlie Beck didn't do his job. And I can't believe that you would sit there and actually be cool with this, with those officers. They failed miserably. They wrongfully took his life.
Thank you.
I'll see you again.
Next speaker.
The next speaker is Melina. Melina Abdullah, please.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Lisa
Ms.
Hines, followed by Melina.
I stepped out for a minute, but I think I heard something about Beck talking about my sister throwing the ashes. Well, she did that because she wanted to put some pain on you, the way we feel. And I didn't know nothing about it, but when I did find out what it was and what she had did, I saw her, but I just thought it was a piece of paper. But I was like, it was like something was released in me. And I just want to speak on you, Beck, because you come out with these reports every week. Last year, you came out with the report about how they did the investigation about the officers checking the cells. How could that have been that when the report came back, they did it in policy, everything was in policy, and no officer was involved with my daughter's death? In no way, shape, form, or fashion did any officer have anything to do with her death. But an officer was fired due to Waukesha Wilson's death, in custody death, because she wasn't checking the cells, didn't check on my daughter like she was supposed to, moved her without authorization to an isolated cell. Right. And get this, they knew She had did this 6 months prior to my daughter's death. But still, they put her in charge that day.
Do you want to use your public comment time now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll give you 2 more minutes then.
How could you allow this to happen? You came in here and you said that your officers were not involved. You said that. Almost 2 years later, I found out that was a lie. Like 3 days after her death, I found out you lied. Well, I didn't find out. I knew you lied when you said there was no altercation with my daughter and the detention officer. You said you knew for a fact, and that was a lie. Every time you say something, it seems like it's a lie.
Open your mouth.
Open your mouth, and it's a what? Lie. Every time you say something. So how can you think or want the Angelinos to trust you? How could you want us to believe in you, that you're trying to do the best for the communities? We can't. There's no way. Big time. Cover up. When I called, you guys told me that you didn't know where she was. Y'all was trying to locate her. How in the hell can you not know where she is when you guys arrested her? This was 2 years ago, and I still don't know what happened to my baby. Because she didn't kill herself. She did not hang herself. My sister was arrested, and she went in the same detention center that she was killed in. She took off her shirt and wrapped it on the phone cord and put it around her neck and tried to go to the middle of the floor, and it couldn't be done. Your officers killed my daughter. They broke her neck. The
Okay, thank you now. Thank you. Next speaker, please. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please. You asked me to take your other 2 minutes.
Give her 10.
Time's up. Thank you.
No, your time is up.
Yeah.
Your time is up.
Let's move on, please.
Done.
Okay.
Not just my daughter's case, the many that happened after her case and before.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Melina Abdullah.
A new president for the commissioners. That's what we need.
Next speaker, please.
Say her name.
Waukesha Wilson.
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 Next speaker.
Let me do one thing and then I'm done. It's nothing. I just need to let y'all hear something. It's nothing from nobody, but it's. Can you get my phone on my purse, please? I'm not calling nobody. I just want y'all to hear something. I'm done. Beck, you said y'all had talked about the liaison program being.
This can be through Abdullah's time. Yeah, it is.
Say Waukesha Wilson. That invokes her spirit, and they don't want that
You spent with me and Jamil spent, and I hope he is hanging in there. He's a wonderful young man. And I wanted to talk to you before the police commission meeting tomorrow. I have been working with the council member, Joe Buscaino, to put forward a council motion that will recognize a family liaison unit in your daughter's name. And I know that this is such a painful moment, and I haven't read the entire report. But if you have any questions about it, I want to make sure that you can reach out to me. So I'll be sure you have copies.
Okay,
That's
thank
all.
you.
That's all I want you guys to hear.
Thank you.
See, from the mayor to the detention officer, you guys lied. That was 2 years ago, and I still have that recording on my phone because he said I would have that memory in my daughter's name, honoring the families
Thank you.
that have death due to the police, in custody and out of custody.
Next speaker, please.
Death. The families will be notified immediately, and it's still not happening.
Thank you.
It's still not happening.
Thank you.
So when will this happen?
Did exactly
when
what
will
you
it
asked me
start?
to do, as to let you go ahead and play the video.
Okay,
Play
but
the tape.
okay,
So
I
why
just
don't you
want to
do
know
what
when
you
will this
said You're
happen?
going to do, and you said you're going to.
When will this happen?
Otherwise, I'm going to have to recess the meeting, and nobody else. will
Okay,
be
I
able
don't
to
want
speak.
that to happen, so I'm gonna sit down.
Thank you very
But I
much.
still need to know when will it
Okay,
happen?
thank you.
When will the families be notified when their loved ones are killed?
Thank you. Next speaker,
Alina
please.
Abdullah, please.
Say her name.
Waukesha Wilson.
Say her name.
Waukesha Wilson.
Say her name.
Waukesha Wilson.
Good job, Sister Lisa.
Mr. Smith, that's your last warning.
Can my time start? Thank you. Start over.
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay. So Charlie Beck, I read this transcripts of that interview. I guess it was an interview that you had with KPCC, where you, the most recent one, where you and Larry Mantle, another white man, were laughing at the pain experienced by a family whose loved one has been killed. You were laughing at the murder of Waukesha Wilson. You were chuckling at it. The thing is, Waukesha Wilson shouldn't have had ashes to throw in your face. Her body should be here. Her body should be here. But her body's not, because your officers murdered her. But her spirit's here, and her spirit is haunting you, and that's why you're putting your head down right now. So we'll always say Waukesha's name. Waukesha Wilson. So this is Ramadan. This is a time when Muslims throughout the world, we empty our stomachs so that we can feed our souls. And so I'm speaking to you from a spiritual level. Yesterday, I was up in Sacramento for the Poor People's Campaign, and I was reminded about how history judges us. I was reminded about the way in which Martin Luther King's memory has been judged and continues to be a guiding force in how we demand justice in this world. And I'm not speaking to Charlie Beck because we already know how history will judge him. He is the modern day Bull Connor. Yes. Will you be the modern day White Citizens Council? Or do you want to be judged some other way? If you want to be judged some other way, then you need to do what we do. You know, those selfish handful of activists that he's talking about? Don't worry about what Bull Connor says, right? We know who we are. We know that when we wake up every morning, we pray that the spirit of our ancestors and the Creator works through us, right? What are you praying for? What are you working towards?
Next speaker, please.
We have no other speakers on this item,
Other
sir.
speakers. Okay, we're going to move to public comment. Do you have the public comment cards?
Just
We have 12 cards.
A quick
12
second.
cards? Okay.
Steve?
Go ahead, first. Yeah, go
Just
ahead.
before we move to public comment, I'm sorry. I just have a question about a report. When we issued the finding in the Waukesha Wilson's case, that finding also required a report on the jails from the Inspector General's office, and that's been, I think, more than a year ago. I'm interested in when we can expect that report.
So I'm happy to get you a deadline. I don't have it now. We took some time when I got on board just a couple months ago to look at that pending report. In my estimation, it needed more work than it had. So we've begun that work now. I think we're far closer to the end than the finish. I can get your deadline. I don't have it for you right now.
Okay, I would just like, when you come back to this commission next week, for you to have that. It's been, again, as I said, more than a year, and we know that it takes a year to just do an investigation and an initial report out on the matter. So this is much delayed, and I think it's critical and should become a priority item that we have that report ready to be issued.
Okay.
And then just, a couple of other things. The chief used, and thank you for your report. So I want to stay on topic on report. The chief used his report to, among other things, to correct the record and to essentially respond to one of the many inflammatory and erroneous or flatly stated misrepresentation lies that emanate from our president and their administration, and I certainly appreciate his taking that time on behalf of this department to set the record straight. I also have appreciated over the course of my tenure on this department the chief being so emphatic in defending the actions of the department with respect to its refusal to cooperate with ICE. Just please let me finish. Where in compliance with both the values of the city and our mayor and this commission. I would like to, however, take this time and to use this platform to also address another inflammatory and hugely destructive proclamation from this administration relative to African American and specifically Black activists. I've had, which has not been done from this platform, and which I do believe should be affirmatively called out and addressed, because we all deserve to have the record set straight and to have comfort. As you probably know, Chief, I know I've discussed it with many members of the command staff. This administration many months ago identified Black identity extremists as posing a specific threat to law enforcement. That is a matter that has caused considerable consternation along with other actions and depictions within the Black community and specifically among Black activists. In making that proclamation, it issued, a pronouncement to law enforcement that they should be particularly concerned about and on the lookout for their safety in connection with Black identity extremists. It's my understanding that this department also considers that proclamation or that advice to be not credible and not something that they have taken or acted upon. I just wanted to inquire formally if you're aware of that pronouncement and if that's something that you also consider to be in error from this administration.
Well, I'm aware of the pronouncement, as you and I have discussed in the past. I have no information that would corroborate it. I don't know what he bases or what the federal entities base their conclusion on. The difference between what I just talked about and this is an investigation entirely within the control of the Los Angeles Police Department that I commented on, so I had absolute and accurate information. I have nothing that corroborates anything that was put forward in that proclamation by the federal government. However, I don't have complete access.
Thank you for that. And then finally, just in response to, and did not hear the chief's interview, and certainly have not read the transcript, and don't have any point of view around that. I do simply want to say that this is a meeting of the Los Angeles Police Commission, and all members of the public are both welcome, and all viewpoints are received and respected, and we appreciate the participation of all individuals present, regardless of the number of times that they enter the room. Thank you.
Okay, let's go. We're going to go now to public comment.
That's some patronizing shit there.
The first
Eddie,
three speakers on
Eddie,
public
do you have a
comment.
public comment card in? Do you have one for public comment in? Ed? Eddie?
Beg your pardon?
Do you have a public comment card in? Why don't you come first?
Eddie H is tonight.
Yeah, Eddie H. Why don't you come first?
I'm speaking from right here. Can I speak from right here?
No, you can't.
That was some patronizing shit, though. It really was. It really was. What about the 22?
So I'll call his card, will you?
Seriously. You literally upheld a killer, right? You really
He doesn't have a public comment card, sir.
Okay. Call the first public comment,
The
please.
first three cards, Adam Smith, Paula Minor,
EH, I'm going to
and
ask you to
Jamie
leave the
Garcia.
meeting. I've given you ample warning. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Next speaker,
Adam Smith.
Mr. Smith.
Followed by Paula Minor and Jamie Garcia.
Can I speak? In solidarity with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, I demand that the Office of the Inspector General perform an audit of Predpol and Operation Laser.
Hold on for a sec. Hold on. Sit down. Eddie, sit down. Eddie, you're fine, sir. I just told you he's fine. Sit down, please. I just asked him not to. Why are you standing up? So I'm going to ask you, Pastor, I'm going to ask you to leave now.
You can ask me to leave.
Okay, go ahead.
You can ask me to leave.
Eddie, you can
but
stay.
This is uncalled for.
Okay,
You
thank
were
you, sir.
sitting there.
Okay,
This wasn't necessary.
thank you, sir.
Now, are you asking me to leave?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bye.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. You guys come in here and you just have him rolling after he's sitting there.
Can you turn the clock on, please?
real time.
This system can never, ever be just.
Can you turn the clock on, please?
This is ridiculous. You guys incited this violence. This is ridiculous. You want to arrest me now?
You going to speak, Mr. Smith?
Real time. That's what we're talking about.
Can I get my clock back?
No. Go ahead.
What did I do wrong?
Go ahead. We called your speaking. You decided not to speak. So
Oh,
go ahead.
right, okay. Every week we come in here and the chief gives his report on crime statistics. But in a city where arrests of homeless went up 30%, while overall arrests went down 50% by a police department that continues to kill the most residents of any police department in the country, shouldn't the public know how our billions in taxpayer dollars are being spent to target and criminalize specific neighborhoods and their residents? And what is the data that is the backbone of this targeting? The byline for the Inspector General's office says that it exists to provide information and analysis regarding the conduct and performance of the LAPD, and it's imperative that these predictive policing programs are exposed as fake science. Analytics are only as good as the data collected, and the data that informs the mathematical models and algorithms used in these programs to predict crime is tainted. It is a data collected by an LAPD with a very well-documented history of racial bias that since its inception has disproportionately targeted our black and brown communities, our poor communities. The field identification cards, the criminal histories, the discriminatory gang designations, all of the data culled to create the chronic offender bulletins used in Operation Laser are tainted. It's unfathomable that the person who created Predpol, Jeff Brantingham, who compares the mindset of people who commit a crime to hunter-gatherers searching for food, is not only an educator, but a university professor and head of the anthropology department at UCLA. I put crime in quotes because this police department continually criminalizes people.
Paula Minor,
Speaker, please. Speaker. Eddie.
Communities.
Eddie H., you can leave the meeting. Next speaker.
Black Lives Matter. victimization of our folk.
You can start the
goes
clock,
on in
please.
every community in
Go
this
ahead.
country, in real time.
Okay.
I do want to say I appreciate the fact that Cynthia asked the OIG to complete their report, or even probably to begin the report that they were asked to do almost a year ago regarding the conditions in the jail. I think that's very important. In addition to that, a letter has been submitted to the OIG asking for an audit of the LAPD predictive policing programs, and we'd like to see a response from the OIG asking that they look at particularly Predpool and Operation Laser. And then the last thing I want to say, because I didn't get to finish my remarks earlier during the response to the chief, is that you know, we talk about the misinformation, we talk about the false narratives that have come from Chief Beck. We talk about how we cannot believe what he says. You know, we talk about how facts are distorted and facts are manipulated. And my last thing I want to say is that we hope, no matter who becomes the new chief, that they do not emulate Chief Beck in this way. We hope, we know that the system cannot totally change, but we hope that that change will bring about more truth and more trust.
Next speaker, please.
Jamie Garcia, followed by Mr. Novak and Hamed Khan.
So on May 8th, the coalition released a report entitled Before the Bullet Hits the Body, on dismantling predictive policing in LA. We called it Before the Bullet Hits the Body is because we want to draw attention to how LAPD programs create conditions on the ground that eventually lead to our death, incarceration, etc. So again, this is the substance we bring. This is the research that we do, and I often, you know, come here expecting, you know, Shane Goldsmith, expecting Matt Johnson, expecting the commissioners to understand these programs or even know that they exist. And sometimes I don't even want to share the information because it's like, why should I be staffing you? You know, why should I be staffing the people who are in charge of LAPD? But hence we gave you the report. I'm not sure if anybody actually read it. I'm not even sure if people still know what laser is, what Predpol is. But I turn my attention to the Office of Inspector General. It's your duty to look at the programs of LAPD. And we know that to be your duty because the suspicious activity reporting program has been audited, primarily because the community came and said this program probably is racially profiling the community. And it turned out that it was a counterterrorism program that was predominantly representing the black community. So you speak about black identity extremists, this program essentially was targeting black women. So we're asking you the same thing. With laser, we want to know who's on the chronic offender bulletin. We want to know what the racial demographics are. We even want to know who the people are because they're actually not criminals. They're under investigation. But again, you're keeping these files from the community because you claim that of this investigatory exemption. So this is what we're asking you, and we asked you to respond to us by May 22nd. So I'm not going to leave this podium until I get an answer from you as to whether or not you're going to audit these programs, what you're going to do about it, and why you didn't even answer the fucking...
Next speaker, please.
Mr. Novak.
Next speaker. So either you're going to go away from the podium or I'm going to recess the meeting into closed session and nobody else will be able to speak. Is that what you want?
All you have to do is point me to somebody, so Ralph, we know...
Time is over. Do you want to leave the meeting? Do you want to leave the room? Do you want to leave the podium or do you...
Mr. President, if you prefer me to give a brief answer now, I'm happy to do that. If not, that's
Go
okay
ahead.
too.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we did receive the letter, looked through the report. We appreciate the concern into the predictive policing programs that are identified. It's our goal overall to look at this department's programs, as you mentioned, policies, procedures, make sure that they're operating within regard for the appropriate training, the appropriate law, and best practices across the country. I agree. I think these predictive policing efforts are some of the types of things that we indeed are interested in. We'll have a response to the letter that was sent to us by Mr. Khan out by the end of the day today. But it's one of the things that I think we will fold into our review as we review all areas of the department to make sure they're operating constitutionally and professionally.
Thank you. Okay, that's enough. Next speaker. So are you? Thank you. You're gonna. So you're asking me to have you taken out of the room. Are you finished? She can leave. You guys can escort her out. Next speaker.
I was a member of the civilian oversight of the Los Angeles Police Department. The first thing I would do would be to move all these meetings out of the LAPD headquarters. The next thing I would do would be to ban the chief from sitting on the dais with the police commission. Following that, I would ask some pointed questions when presentations are made and not rubber stamp the vote. When the presentation was made about the best practices training and they talked about CPR and first aid, I would ask why they didn't provide.
Why are you?
Rushing me right now like you fucking did Eddie. Huh? Where are the police surrounding me now, Soboroff?
You're interrupting the speaker.
Such a blatant example of racism. Such a blatant example of racism. You are so freaking racist. It's so pathetic. And I told myself I wasn't going to yell today, but this is an example.
You can take her out of the room. You can take her out of the room. Go ahead. Bye. Go ahead, Novak.
When they testified about first aid and CPR for people that they had use of force on, why they didn't do anything to treat or deal with Eric Rivera, whom they ran over, broke his leg, and shot 7 times.
You're disrupting the meeting, so if there's any more disruption in the meeting, we'll just go into closed session. If there is any more disruption to this meeting, we're going to closed session. Go ahead.
As I say, if in some alternate universe I was a member of the police commission, I would move a policy to stop LAPD contact with the homeless. I would stop LAPD contact with people in a mental illness crisis. And I would cease any contact with the Israeli training officers and contracts they might have with the LAPD because Israel just carried out genocidal attacks on the people of Gaza and used drones to tear gas peaceful demonstrators. So I think that in general, the LA Police Commission is completely derelict in its duties.
Next speaker.
Speaker is Rigoberto Romero, followed by Hamid Khan.
Morning, sir.
Mr. Inspector General, Chief, good morning, Mr. T-Fank, Police Commission. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. I'm a retired LAPD captain. I've been retired for 5 years, and I'm very active in the community with the diplomatic community, also with immigrant rights groups and with other community leaders. Had an opportunity to review some of the comments by the Police Commission President regarding Chief Arcos and the situation that happened with his daughter, which was really concerning to many of us. And we have a situation where we believe as a community that that level playing field in terms of the selection process for the new chief of police has really been disrupted. We have a situation that's very tragic. What happened with his daughter, what happened to 2 family members who lost, their loved ones, which is overall a very tragic situation. There's really, I got calls starting last night all the way through this morning on folks who are really upset over the fact that, perhaps we've taken this situation and we've inserted something that shouldn't have been there. And specifically speaking, a family member was brought into the fold of the selection of the chief of police. And, here we have a man, a chief of police who grew up in Los Angeles, who went to these schools, who got to the point where he's one of the top 3 candidates. And I have to say that all 3, in my opinion, are absolutely ready to handle this police department. I worked for one of them, and I worked alongside with 2 others. And I really think that based on what I heard from the community and what I feel as well as a 50-year resident of this city of Los Angeles, that there has to be some type of way to fix this, or at least the comment by the president of the police commission to say, talk about your comments. And I don't mean that in any bad way. I just think that we have to re-level that playing field.
Good, thank you, sir.
Because, we really appreciate the work that you do, so thank you.
Okay, so let me do that now. And I truly, because my comments about the way Bobby Arcos handled the situation with his wife were very positive and very respectful. I also felt that that if it's been interpreted. Time's up. Okay, so if it's been interpreted as a criticism of Bob, I think it was
Mr. President, if I may, I think it's appropriate to get some counsel from the city attorney.
Okay.
It is not common to respond to public comment because it is not on the agenda,
I'll meet you
sir.
afterwards. Can we do that?
And I'm just trying to protect the sanctity of the Brown
Sure.
Act and
Okay,
ensure
good.
you all comply with it at all
Next
times,
speaker.
sir.
Next speaker.
The next speaker, Hamid Khan, followed by General Jeff and Ahmed Goings.
So hang in there, we'll talk after. Mr. Khan?
Yes, I'm here. This is a freak show that as it starts out, and the selective process of how power is exercised and unleashed. This is a clear example of how the freak show happens. But just want to go back to you, Mark Smith. I think you talked about constitutional policing. The issue here is that on the surface, many a times, and we had the same issue with the suspicious activity reporting program, where there was clear evidence of racial profiling, and where there's clear evidence that the way suspicious activity is even defined, it doesn't even fall within the constitutional parameters. I don't know if you know about what the definition is observed behavior reasonably indicative of pre-operational planning of criminal or terrorist activity. You're a lawyer, right? So explain to me, or maybe you can't answer to me right now, but think about it when you're ordering an audit of these programs. That observed behavior reasonably indicative of pre-operational planning. So what we are doing here is that under the veneer of science and pseudoscience, we're legitimizing speculative policing. That's what's really going on. So if you really want to uphold the integrity of this office, if you really want to be a representative, a true watchdog, you will pay heed to the letter, which is very detailed of what we have mapped out. Because predictive policing is roundly now being discredited, just like broken windows was. The city of Richmond in Northern California has done away with predictive policing. Burbank Police Department is really rethinking and doing away with predictive policing. We saw what happened with Palantir, that NYPD is getting rid of Palantir within their ranks. We saw what happened with the New Orleans Police Department most recently, where Palantir is being kicked out of their programs as well. Because what is happening is that this has become a profit-making endeavor. That's why you have Craig Uchida assess.
Next speaker, please.
General Jeff, please.
Jeff, next speaker. Jeff?
Thank you, sir. General Jeff Skid Row. As I embark this journey to officially file a complaint against Lame Duck Police Chief Charlie Beck, I just want to publicly notify this commission as well as my allies that are recording this that I fear for my life. in terms of potential retaliatory efforts, once again by LAPD, which have been ongoing for years. So I just wanted to duly note it. There's still opportunity for this commission to change the process to where we, the people, get to elect the police chief on behalf of we, the people of Skid Row, and we, the people of the city of Los Angeles. We encourage this commission to put forth an interim police chief for possibly 12 months so that the process can be vetted and completed. And as a reminder, and as a comparison, June 5th, there will be the election of the next top sheriff for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And so this commission actually has a model that they can actually emulate, and a process that can also be emulated and drafted from in real-time information. So it's very important that we, the people, can eliminate a lot of the public's frustrations with the department if we put forth candidates that we feel more comfortable with. That said, speaking of candidates, I'm not sure if the list of candidates was ever released publicly. There's a concern that there were no female candidates put forth. With all this energy about women's empowerment, where we want to be, there's a very strong concern that the women in the department are encouraged, and there is no glass ceiling as far as the women in the Los Angeles department.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ahmed Goins, followed by Gina Viola and Jonathan Foster.
Thanks for your patience.
You're welcome. Sorry to take up your time earlier. I'm here to speak on one issue that we can all...
Speak into the mic, okay, because you're tall. Thanks.
I want to make sure that we get our kids to live in Los Angeles, grow up in Los Angeles, and prosper in Los Angeles. And there's been too many of us dying. The chief said his statistics were that there was a 1% raise in bicycle fatalities. And there's a law in the books that Los Angelinos voted for, I believe, and the state of California gave us the right to have a lane all to ourselves, but not many motorists know about it. I'm only speaking about the 3 feet law right now, which was passed in 2014, I believe. And every year since, there has been more deaths than the previous year. I'm speaking for a lot of people who can't make it. And a lot of mothers and a lot of grandparents, uncles and aunties, brothers and sisters and friends have fallen loved ones who have died on the streets of Los Angeles. There is 90 miles of really bad road, I hear, in the county of Los Angeles, and we had 4 deaths last month on those roads. I wanted to know that the police chief could hear me ask for our 3 feet. If the motor vehiclists that drive in Los Angeles knew that we were afforded 3 feet, they may give it to us to stay away from the view of the police. So whatever this board can do to help promote lives and a safe living experience, I would be obliged. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
On Tuesday, May 8th, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition delivered an email and a letter to the Office of Inspector General Mark Smith and all 5 commissioners demanding the immediate dismantling, rescinding, and auditing of the LAPD predictive policing programs PredPol and Operation Laser. We've not received a response, so I'm speaking on their behalf to echo what my colleagues have said today. We need a response today, and it needs to be meaningful. This is a completely unacceptable action from an independent watchdog that is supposed to serve the people and provide information and analysis regarding the conduct and performance of the LAPD. It is not unprecedented for the community to come to the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners or the OIG in regards to a program they feel is detrimental to the community. SARS was found to be racial profiling. We know that these programs are also going to be found as racial profiling. They operate with no public disclosure regarding the mechanics of their operations and impact. They are self-audited. You haven't done any sort of independent auditing, and the only people doing any auditing are financially invested in the outcomes of what those audits produce. It is just, again, it's using pseudoscience to justify racial profiling. We see the racial profiling in this room. It's in the community. It's in every program that the LAPD uses. Please do your job, please answer that letter, and please present an audit. Thank you.
Jonathan Foster, followed by Jacqueline Richardson, Pastor Q, and Melina. Melina Abdullah.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Foster again. I'm so close to executing the citizen's arrest. You know, I'm so close to arresting all of you. We have that power to arrest you. U.S. Code Title 18, Chapter 73, Section 1505. If someone influences, obstructs, or impedes endeavors to influence or obstruct, impede, or due to proper administration of the law under which pending proceedings is being had or before any department or agency of the United States of America, Special Order 40 is against the law. I'm one to arrest you right now. Special Order 40 is a sanctuary policy. It takes an act of Congress to do Special Order 40. You are not Congress. Eric Garcetti is not Congress. I want to put you in jail right now. Special Order 40 is the killer of thousands of black people. You people. Remember the wiretap at Hawaiian Gardens? The gangs were, yeah, you know that black house on that other, we got to kill them and then we can continue to take over the streets, and now it's all Mexican. And I love those people. How come that idiot with those billions of dollars doesn't go to Mexico and just unload like $5 billion on all the Mexicans? He loves them so much. I do too. But when they're illegal, and they were killing people on the streets, and they were, oh, well, he's just illegal. We can't take him out of here. And then they're committing crime tomorrow with you. Now, I know that the federal government should have deported a lot of these people, but the commission is the secret federal government. You are the secret federal government called Mossad. You are the drug cartel. I want to put you in jail. I am so close to putting you in jail. You need to go to jail.
Jacqueline Richardson.
I have two subjects. One is the governor of states, governors throughout the United States. The other subject is women in the local fire departments. I'm wondering if it would be a good idea or wise to check governors to make sure they have not been holographed. For instance, if a governor comes in, he talks for maybe 15 minutes, half hour. If he goes out and comes back in, it might not be him, it might be his holograph. I'm asking that they be checked and watched daily so that won't happen. The governor generally is more wise than his holograph. The next subject is firemen and firewomen in the local fire departments. The last I heard, there were women in the fire departments, in the local fire departments. I'm wondering if they can maintain their dignity in the local fire departments, because, and if they have separate facilities for washing and bathing and everything else. I'm wondering if that a courtesy is being allowed them so they can take care of their bodies in dignity and privacy.
Thank you. Pastor Q, John Marie, and then Melina Abdullah. Melina Abdullah, please.
So when I addressed the chief's report, I ended by asking you what side of history you want to be on. How do you want history to judge you? How do you want the Creator and our ancestors to judge you? What legacy do you want to leave? The Los Angeles Police Commission is one of the most undemocratic, repressive bodies in the nation. Just look at how we're surrounded by police, or we were, right, before the room emptied, right? If you think about the way in which people are escorted out, ejected, because Steve Soboroff has such an ego that he can't just allow a few seconds to tick, right? He can't just allow Eddie H. to speak his mind from his seat, right? He can't stand when Pastor Q, a pastor, stands up to protect the rights of our people to engage, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. And you sit here and you allow Charlie Beck to condemn those of us who are the most engaged. That's the definition of democracy. I have a PhD in political science, right? This is what I study, and this is what we are supposed to be doing. You all, as the body that's supposed to, Shane Goldsmith, I'm talking, Steve Soboroff, I'm talking, Matt Johnson, I'm talking, and you're supposed to be representing me. You're supposed to be representing me. But instead you look down and ignore us because you don't want to hear. But you're supposed to be representing me. You should be praising those of us who are here 3 or more times. I heard your officers outside in the hall, yeah, he's a regular. He's been here 3 times already, so, you know, we don't respect them. That's what they said. I have it on video. We are engaged residents in our community. This is what we are supposed to be doing. This is a definition of democracy. And you need to think about how history, how our ancestors, and how the Creator will ultimately judge you when you refuse to stand up.
Next speaker.
We're now in item number 5, closed session. We have one comment card. We have Mr. Novak on 5A1.
Yeah, the closed session items 5A1 and 2, you have officer involved with shooting number 3817, and then officer involved with shooting number 4317. So my assumption is that means that by June of last year, June 8th of last year, there were 43 officer involved shootings, that there were 4 shootings in between number 38 and number 43 that are not on your agenda yet. And I think it's incumbent upon you to develop some policies to deal with this, rather than just looking at each individual case. I noticed that they did, in fact, release the names of 3 finalists for the chief of police, and one of them, Assistant or Deputy Chief Moore, according to the LA Times biography that they published, it was a serial killer cop. He shot and killed 2 people early in his police career. So I find it unfathomable that you would forward as one of the top 3 candidates for chief of police someone who had that on his record. Wow. And I think it's measured by the fact that week after week, in general, you find most of these shootings in policy. And I think it's unconscionable.
And there are no other comment cards. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session.
Comments on the 2?
No, we have none, sir.
Oh, there are no comments.
There are no other.
Okay.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 5A1 and 2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 5A1 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 5A2 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. Mr. President, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.